Hello my friends and welcome. We have some interesting news coming from the Moscow. It was the massive drone attack on that city. It all started from the last night. Then Russia fired the rockets on Ukrainian cities including Kyiv and launched the drones. This is a big residential building in the Kyiv city. As you can see, the penthouse was totally demolished by the drone attack. Unfortunately, there are some casualties. And in a few hours after Kyiv attack, someone launched the drones to target the objects in Moscow. This is the drone. You can hardly see it on this video. Well, it has the stabilizer on the front and the wing on the back, as well as the engine is also mounted on the back side. We call it the duck scheme, so it flies towards that part. Yeah, quite unusual. Unfortunately, most of the drones were targeted in the air and some went also to the residential buildings. However, they didn't explode and just hit the apartments. None of the drones exploded. And there are no any civilian casualties in Russia because of the today's drone attack. About the number of the drones, some say that there were around 10 of the drones, some say more than 20. Really, it's hard to say, but I guess it's around 10. Sorry for the watermark, so here you can see where the drone hit the residential building, also the penthouse, but you see the devastation the drone brought to the locals. Just missing windows, and even this wall at the place where the drone hit the building is basically intact. It was just a collision. This video was published as well. I don't think that it is the drone. I think it is the Cessna aircraft or something like that. Well, it may be the drone, but it looks like the airplane. And those are the areas in Moscow that were targeted. Sorry about the Russian language here, I don't have the English version. Well, the targets mostly concentrated at this area where there is the Russian elite district, Rublovka, where Russian elite usually lives, like politicians or propaganda journalists, sportsmen and others. Everyone who has enough money to live there, because it's very expensive. And yes, Russia shut down many of the drones, and also they used the special interference devices to redirect drones, and some of the drones just went into the fields. That is why I personally think that the drones were disturbed on their trajectory, and that's why they hit the usual residential buildings. Because Rublovka was the main targeted spot, many Moscow citizens actually liked that. Even Russian propaganda journalists like Davydov in their programs say that Russians, what are you doing? Why are you laughing that Rublovka was attacked? We're the same people, it doesn't matter how much you earn. But there is one thing, usually people who live in Rublovka, they do not earn the money. They take those money from the Russian budget, so from Russians. Some of the Russian members of parliament already started to say that Russia should use nukes against Ukraine. But I'm not really sure whether Ukraine was responsible. I think Russia is doing that themselves. It is just the accident. They wrongly programmed their drones to target Kyiv and instead put Moscow in coordinates. Well, actually, Russian FSB started to search some sort of the people who might have launched those drones from the Moscow area. But according to Russian FSB officials, they haven't got any order from the Russian elite and from Putin directly to start those searches. Today, Putin stated in the media resources that Russia targeted the Ukrainian intelligence office, but it's false. That building is still alive, it's in Kyiv, I saw many of the photos, so Putin tells lies. This information was spread around 1 week ago. The building is just old and it looks like that there was the fire, but actually no, and Putin spread this misinformation to the media. Putin's secretary Peskov says that Ukraine is responsible for today's attack on the Moscow city, and then journalists ask Peskov what Moscow citizens should do in case of the drone attack. Peskov replied that he has no answer to that question and he prefers not to leave his comment on that issue. There were no any sirens today in Moscow, no alerts, no warnings, nothing. This is how Russia cares about their own people. And again, it shows that the only air defense they have is based in the Moscow city. If those drones had been launched from the Ukrainian territory, they should have passed lots of the kilometers, hundreds. And basically by accusing Ukraine for this event, they sign up that the Russian air defense is useless. Ukraine may legally use the force outside its own borders, says the Minister of the Foreign Affairs of the United Kingdom. He says that the military targets that the Russian Federation might use against Ukraine are the legal targets for Ukrainian army. This was his comment just after the drone attack on the Moscow city. According to some images, we may understand that few of the drones made it finally to their targets. And there's the question whether Ukraine should use the similar attacks as Russia does on our territory, our civilian infrastructure, basically on our people. What I may say that deep in my heart, I would like the Russian people to feel the same as Ukrainian people feel throughout this war. We lose our relatives, we lose our houses. The life in Ukraine in general is very difficult because of their attacks. Our economy declined. So yes, I would like Russians to feel the same, to understand. On the other hand, I do not support attacks on civilian infrastructure. We should stay above it. Military targets, Rublovka, where the Russian elite lives, it's okay. The casual buildings, I don't support that. But again, because Russia uses the interference devices that disrupt the signal for the drone or GPS signal, they may fly the drone as they want, so they may target their own buildings, maybe by chance or maybe on purpose. Anyways, today Russians in Moscow especially realized that the special military operation is not that far away. Just remember, in my last video I told you about the tiny little town at the border with Ukraine in the Belgorod Oblast, Russia. The town name is Shebekino. There were lots of the explosions in that town because Russia placed lots of the military infrastructure in that area. Locals started to complain about the explosions, and what Russian propaganda media does, they just exclude Shebekino from their programs. It seems like there are two parallel Russians. One is in Moscow or St. Petersburg, where the Russian elite is still fine. The other reality is the rest of Russia, including Shebekino and all those Russians who somehow fight still in Ukraine. And today those realities just collide. And I think lots of the elite members of Russia, including politicians and other public figures, will leave Russia for good. If it was the Ukraine that conducted those attacks, it is a very smart move to target Rublovka. The Russian Legion of Freedom has started the program to recruit thousands of soldiers from the Russian people. They want to take Moscow. This information was published in the Times. They'll continue their recruitment program until there will be enough troops to start the assault towards Moscow. Well, based on the assault towards the Belgorod, they don't really need a lot of people to go to Moscow. The Russian army is now almost fully in Ukraine. And the professional Russian army is basically gone in 2022. The only capable force that Russia still has is the Wagner group, but they're quite restricted, and now they're leaving the Bakhmut city. By the way, Prigozhin today said that he is okay with the drone attacks on Rublovka. However, he was in desperate and anger as usual that Russian military let this happen, I mean the attack in Moscow. He says that the Russian military bureaucrats are the bigger enemy for Russia than Ukraine. We have the photo from the destroyed Russian barracks. This building was totally demolished, probably by Storm Shadow cruise missile, or maybe many of those missiles, because devastation is terrible, and it is reported that Russia lost around 100 soldiers. It happened near to Mariupol, and there is the small town Yurivka. By the way, today is the last day of the spring. Many of the Ukrainian officials promised the counteroffensive during the springtime. Also many of the Western allies, by the way. The weather is not the issue any longer, as many of the media resources said before. Also I said about it, so probably we are still waiting for some sort of the weaponry. Again, President Zelensky yesterday stated that they agreed the date for the counteroffensive and he already ordered it. But we are out of clue when it will happen. Melitopol was also hit today, and there's the road that Russia uses for their supplies. Well, what I was able to find is this Ukrainian-made drone. Definitely you can see some bombs under the fuselage, but this is not the kamikaze drone. And let's watch the video once again. Probably it's not the same. So here's the video. Let me stop somewhere to show you. The cameraman is not doing a fantastic job, but I hope you're able to see that there are some reinforcements of the wing construction, like you may find on many of the airplanes. Basically those tubes, we call it raschalki. But there is no such a device on the Ukrainian-made drone. On the video it was like that. Like on the bigger airplanes, for the small drone you don't really need that. There was just a minor update of the front lines today, so tomorrow we'll see more, I think. Hopefully the news will be positive for Ukraine. Now let's measure the distance from the Russian capital to, let's say, Ukrainian border. It's 529 kilometers, so actually we may try to use the Storm Shadow rockets or cruise missiles, because potentially they have the range up to 560 kilometers. We'll see that in the future, and I expect more drone attacks on the other parts of Russia, including Moscow. From what I understood, today's assault was the first try, and in the future there will be many more drones. My friends, now press the like to this video, and also if you want to support my job, you may find some of the links in the video description just below. You may support me on Patreon or on the sponsorship of this YouTube channel. My friends, thank you so much for your kind support and your awesome help. I wish you all a peaceful sky wherever you are, and have a great time.